Good evening, everyone. I hope you are all well. Now, Labour's council tax bombshell. Will they or won't they? Now, this is an interesting one. If you've been watching my last few streams, I can't even remember which one it was in particular, but I think I've mentioned it more than once or twice. I did point out that we have officially around 120,000 guests languishing in four-star hotels, mainly at the expense of the taxpayer, who were earmarked to go to Rwanda. All of that's changed, as you're aware. On top of that, whereas previously or before the election, the law which had been changed and that applied to them was that because they had entered the country illegally, they would never be entitled to apply for asylum. So, as well as scrapping Rwanda, Keir Starmer has now decided that they are entitled to apply for asylum, which I'm sure every single one of them will. And based on the average pass rate, we could expect between 70 to 90,000 of them to be granted ILR, indefinite leave to remain, if not more. That will probably be fast tracked, so it will happen in a matter of months. They will then effectively be kicked out because they're not the government's responsibility anymore. Angela Rayner will be bussing them around the country to divide them equally, apart from anywhere near her friends and or Gary Lineker, of course. And then they become the responsibility of the local authorities who have to pay for them. They have to pay for their accommodation, other expenses, and that comes from your council tax, which is already overstretched because there are certain demands on council tax that have gone through the roof since COVID, in particular, temporary childcare. Unfortunately, in some areas or many areas, more than half your council tax goes on uh, temporary care for children, which, due to the shortage of foster parents, has to go through agencies, and they charge the local authorities as much as £5,000 per child per week, and upwards. So you can see where the money's going. So when we have another 70, 80, 90,000, if not more, the same question applies that has applied to everything where Labour is concerned. Where is the money coming from? Now, here's interesting. Here's from the channel that always tells the truth, the BBC. Now, this is from, I'm looking now, 17th of June. Labour rules out changes to council tax bans. Now, this is how sly they are. They were, to be fair, they were pushed and pushed by the Conservatives to rule out taxes that they would not change. And they ruled out national insurance, and they ruled out income tax. And then when they were pushed on council tax, Jonathan Ashwood said, "We're not changing council tax banding." Okay, so they're not changing the banding. That doesn't mean that they're not going to claw in more money. Now, according to the Mail, there has been rumours and leaks circulated, which is how these things are done. I'd better pause here in case we have any psychologically deranged lefties watching. We are in this country allowed to speculate on rumours. We're also allowed to voice opinion that we think this and this. If it's, for example, speculation or unconfirmed. For example, if I were to say that I believe that Keir Starmer is a Marxist, a deranged Marxist, prior to the election, I suppose, even though most of us knew, it would have had to have gone under the label of unconfirmed. That means it's not being stated as a fact. It means it's being stated as a suggestion slash question slash speculation. Now, after yesterday's speech, I am quite happy to dub the Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer because he made it clear that he is about to launch his personal Stasi police on all those who dare to lift up their head and speak against everything that they are doing to our country. I digress. But anyway, back to the Mail and those rumours. It is rumoured and even suggested in the corridors of power that Labour may be changing the council tax structure completely into a property tax. And it is suggested that that may be a figure of around 0.5% of a property's value per year. This would, of course, be quite beneficial to those in the lower end of properties, of course. But once you go above, above the asking price, above the 500,000-600,000, not asking average price, and you go above 500,000-600,000, it rapidly begins to paint a different picture. Think about London and the southeast in particular. Think about how many terraced houses there are, Victorian terraced houses. Maybe the people bought it in the 60s for whatever it was worth at the time. And maybe they just work manual jobs. Their house is paid off. They manage on a meager pension. They won't even be getting their winter fuel allowance. And then 0.5% tax comes in and their house is worth 2 million. For example, that's a horrendous amount of money. And obviously it goes up disproportionately beyond that, or proportionally rather, beyond that. Again, at this point, it's not so alarming, but it depends, again, what happens going forward, especially what happens with property prices. Now, as it stands, the minute that this is actually put into place, if they were to go ahead with this, it's a very, very clever strategy from the point of view of the government, because once they've got it in place, it is then index linked with property forever. Property goes up, your tax goes up, that's it, full stop. The gremlin here is if it's 0.5% of your property value, that means that effectively your property has to be valued every year before your build. How will that work? Is that going to open the door to thousands and thousands of court cases? So I doubt that, because I have no doubt that they will bring in a structure and it will be covered, and it will be against a certain barometer or whatever it may be. They would have to, because otherwise, if it's on an annual valuation, then people would contest it and it wouldn't work. So I think that they must have something there in mind. But ultimately, this is not just about the money, which will be a greater and greater contribution from those who do own property, but it's the mindset. It is the mindset of taking more and more from those who achieve. And it is also, I believe, a way of forcing these people out of their homes. Because if you've worked hard all your life and you've paid off your home and you're sitting, you're sitting on quite a lot of equity, these people despise you. And these people resent what you have, and these people want to take it away. They've managed to sneak into power with a minority of the vote. In fact, this last election wasn't about electing the Labour Party into government. it was actually 80% of people eligible to vote, demonstrating that they do not want these people in power. These are horrid people, and they are sadly supported by an army of deranged, malicious, resentful, bitter, twisted Trotskyites who literally converge onto anybody who contradicts the narrative, normally with fake profiles, fake pictures, because they're normally gutless. I seem to have had no end of them just lately. But if you ask them to join you to speak face to face or join me in a live stream, they never would. They would only they only speak openly if they're invited on a left-wing channel like the BBC. Question time. They'd be happy to take their £150 plus their £30 expenses so that they could go on question time. And every time somebody who's not left speaks, they just sit there shaking their head in disapproval. Um, and yet they would argue that it's not a setup, just in the same way that they would argue that they've not covered up for a string of perverts over the decades. This last monster, least of all, who was paid this princely sum and had a rise of 40, £50,000, when now it has been admitted that they knew he was charged with something sexual, yet they continue to pay him, and they're now considering clawing back the money. What about his pension? Do you think that he should be entitled to a pension, uh, of the size that he would be getting, paid for by license fee payers? And on that note, are any of you watching, or do any of you who are watching actually pay your BBC TV license? And if you do, I'd love to know why. Just a moment, let me just go to the comments and say hello to everyone. Uh, so, no wonder Britain is on its knees, isn't it just? And it's just getting worse and worse. And this is absolutely ridiculous. Punishing success, punishing aspirations, punishing individuality, punishing independent education. Uh, these people, they should all be in prison. And in the right situation, I could see that happening. Although, unfortunately, um, it probably won't. More council taxes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, Charlie. And why? Why should people be punished because they have ploughed everything into their home? It's just, it is absolutely disgraceful. Less service. What, there's bound to be less services because most of the money is going to be paying for our new friends. And this is just the start of it. And we're going to have more guests as time goes on. And anybody who disagrees with us hosting our guests, fully inclusive room and board, will then be deemed as far right. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The left wing fanatics who support this, anyone who supports this, is mentally deranged. You would have to be. And if they're not mentally deranged, they are guilty of and should be charged with treason, because they are actively undermining and destroying our country. That, I'm sorry to say, is exactly what I believe. And just for the record, in case they are watching, I haven't preceded that with unverified, because as far as I'm concerned, this is not supposition, this is not conjecture, it is fact. It has to be. Starmer is Britain's worst enemy, in cahoots with the bent ones. Foul attempt as a human being. Yes, but as I have said previously, we're only, I thought, a month into it now. Is it a month today? Okay, we're only a month into it. But taking from 2 years ago, from the minute Rishi Sunak got into power, all the way up to the election, through the election, and now this last month, I have to say, I have this horrid, horrid feeling that it's almost as though that man who effectively just looked like a hapless reject in a school, the type, the prefect, and the ankle bashers, the trousers, and uh, the pathetic announcing the election in the rain, etc. But was that all just an act, something different to what Boris had done, so that he would just look like this nice man who means well, but in actual fact, he was a calculated traitor who got into power, destroyed the Conservative Party, made concessions that you and I never agreed to Europe, ran the party into the ground, called an election without actually discussing it with anyone first. We all assumed it may have been because to preempt reform, because reform was going from strength to strength, or was it that he expected bad news about the economy, or was it to do with flights never actually taking off to Rwanda? We weren't really sure at the time before the election. But since the election, has he delivered a single blow to Starmer or his incompetent cabinet? The answer is no, not once. This is the easiest administration to rip to shreds in Parliament and outside of Parliament, be it face to face, or be it online, or be it in interviews, because they are incompetent. Their mindset is clear. Starmer yesterday revealed his hand that he is basically launching his own version of the Stasi upon us. And at the same time, when I saw them debate before the election, and then I watched their interaction, their body language, that body language wasn't professional pleasantry. It was the best of mates body language. And I also saw that very same body language when the debate finished, when Angela Rayner and Penny Mordaunt behaved like a couple of spoilt, screaming, pathetic schoolgirls in a playground. And yet, at the end, when it went to the credits and you're watching them, it was that same pally pally. It was almost as though they were laughing with each other and asking each other, do you think they bought this crap that we performed for them tonight? That's how it feels. It's almost as though Sunak ran the party and the country into the ground and handed it over to Starmer, because effectively their paymasters are the same. As Nigel Farage has said, we haven't elected a new government, we have elected new middle management, and they're all the same. And with the exception of Suella Braverman, if she were to defect to reform, the rest of the Conservative Party, they might as well just merge with Labour, because I can't tell them apart. I'm not sure if you can. What was this one? Next one. More control. Absolutely, more control. The thought police. Have you not noticed how the police have suddenly become more violent? You saw last night, the night before, whenever it was, somebody in Whitehall was literally standing there. He was doing nothing, and they pounced on him and they were punching him in the head on camera. This is where we've got to. What will be the next step for anybody who disagrees? He's already said facial recognition, denial of transport. It's sounding very much like China, isn't it? And the next step after that, once they push through CBDC, what will it be then? If you misbehave, shutting down your bank account, switching you off, denying you access to transport. These people are evil. And because there is no logic to their deranged policies, that is why, if you've noticed, that lefties never debate, they just hate. All they do is throw insults and slander at you. Far right, fascist, xenophobe, Islamophobe, etc. They are not capable of having a coherent debate without resorting to abuse, because their argument does not hold water. It never did. It never does. They are founded on malicious, resentful, and quite disturbing resentment for anybody or anything that is not part of their little bubble. It's actually, on the one hand, it is quite sad, but on the other side, the other hand, it's terrifying because they have their hand on the tiller now, thanks to the 33% who actually were so irresponsible and so reckless that they voted for them. 15-minute cities incoming. Oh, Ed Miliband, he's desperate to do all of that. How deranged is this? They are going to destroy independent schools with the intention of raising 1.7 billion. That's an excuse. That's not the reason, because they know that tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of pupils will be pulled out of these independent schools. Not only would they lose the VAT on those pupils, but every pupil that leaves will also re-enter state schools, which cost the government 5 or 6 or 7,000 per child per year. I'm not sure how it is. So there's a strike point. I think the strike point is somewhere between 100 and 150,000 pupils need to be pulled out of independent schools, put into state schools, and there it will end up being a net gain of zero, but they would have destroyed all of these independent schools. The money is an excuse. The real reason is they resent independent schools. They do not want or will not permit independent schools, independent education, independent thinking. They do not want institutions of education. They want institutions of indoctrination. And as a leading commentator said just the other day, I forgot who it was, we have witnessed a silent communist takeover right under our noses, and it's happened without us realizing, in uh, politically, culturally, socially, in every way. Our culture, our society, right across Europe, right across the West, is being destroyed. And I believe that the source, those provoking it, are in more than, it's not just one. It's not just the WEF. I think that there's several heads to this snake. Council taxes in Sunderland will be going up after tonight. Yes, I see that there are protests. There are so many protests lined up over the weekend. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I really hope that they are all peaceful, because if they're not, we're playing right into his hands. And keep in mind that the mainstream media is as treacherous as he is. The BBC are only concerned about not being defunded and not being punished too harshly for covering up for yet another pervert. Sky News is no better, and neither is Channel 4. And good evening to you too. Thank you for joining me. Michael, good evening. I haven't paid TV tax 7 years. I don't watch live TV. Fantastic. I'm so pleased to hear it. Good evening, Rob. I hope you're well. WEF puppets in power. Yeah, absolutely. But this is getting really serious now, and it is worrying. And again, for many of us, it may appear probably this 0.5% levy per year for many people will be better off. That's the hook. That's where they get you, because the majority of people, or many people, or many parts of the country, will be initially better off. But what do they have in mind? What would they do if they really want to take more from people? Would they just simply encourage a property bubble, pushing up prices more and more and more and more? I don't know. I don't know what their plans are. But one thing I have said, and I stand by, is that great swathes of this country, over 50s, over 60s, are holding the vast majority of the wealth in this country. which is fair enough. But this lot don't like it. They want to get their hands on it. And I don't think that they have any right to even think about doing that. Make money by helping people to generate money, not by resentfully stealing what hardworking people have worked for and sacrificed years, decades of their lives to get together. That is wrong. Rob Brown, right. I hope your comments don't start disappearing again tonight. In Dublin, the Wokies held a vigil today for the Hamas leader who got taken out. It's quite funny because the Sharia they're so keen on importing would gobble them up given the chance. That Hamas leader who got taken out, we should all be absolutely celebrating that he got taken out, and shame on anybody who actually mourns him, because he was a monster. And I'm really delighted that he was taken out, and I hope that Israel stays strong and wipes out every leader of Hamas and Hezbollah once and for all. Communism, yes, I'm afraid so. Thank you. Okay. Tube train incident wouldn't have happened if there was no free travel card. I blame the attack on the person who gave him the travel card. Now his claim for asylum will be accepted for the Looney asylum. Yes, I'm afraid so. And as I said, they are going to be effectively running around like headless chickens over the next few months, trying to scrape together, or rather steal, the money to pay for these people who shouldn't actually even be here. They're going to be taking money from hard-working British citizens to fund people who have elbowed their way into our country, and the reward, the punishment for objecting to it, is going to become more and more serious as time goes by. For the moment, we have to deal with a bunch of deranged, fanatical, brainwashed lefties, but it won't be long before there will be legal and political fallout and punishment for contradicting and objecting to what's happening. And that's really, really worrying, because it's almost that we're being pushed towards the tipping point, and there will come a tipping point, because unfortunately, despite the ratio of, if you like, people who are against all of this and people who are incoming, the more there are incoming, the more support there is for more to come in, because those who are here, the vast majority, want more people to come. It's just how it is. And as I've said previously on posts I've made, there's one on my Facebook now, with some moron who put a post up. 1 minute, here's a he sounds like he's foreign and he's objecting to more foreigners coming, so he's objecting to himself. What an idiot. That was her comment. No, because ultimately, just because people are here who is heritages from another country in the past doesn't mean that they want the floodgates open for this country to be destroyed. And have no doubt, have no doubt that if I were miraculously made Home Secretary tomorrow, I would have absolutely no reservations in starting to deport people. And I'd probably start with members of my own community, members of my own family. Have no doubt at all. I've got an auntie who didn't cheer when England scored a goal. I'd be straight round to her. Come on, Auntie Maria, pack your bags. I'm deporting you. And take your musakawa, you stroppy cow. Starmer promised, I've gone to the wrong one now. Sorry. Right. Starmer promised yesterday restricting people from getting on the tube. Today, some were cancelled. Yes, but he actually said that they're going to step up facial recognition So we're talking. He basically said yesterday that we're approaching the Chinese system, where effectively, if you misbehave, that via facial recognition, you'll be switched off just like that. It's going to start with the obvious: if you rebel, if you riot, etc. Then it will be if you say something wrong. Then it will be if you actually put your rubbish out on the wrong day. It's it is terrifying. It's always a slippery slope, and we should all be alarmed. The problem is, this was planned earlier, but probably coming in sooner due to current event. The problem is this: that although there may be in this country at least 40 million people, if not more, who really are fuming and want to speak up, how many of those people want to but can't because of their job, their business, their bank account? All of these reasons, they have us tied up in knots. This is the problem. And unfortunately, every day that goes by, the battle becomes more and more uphill. The odds against us being able to stop this nightmare are lessening every day. And the odds of us literally being the underdogs in our own country increase every day. And these people do not love our country. They hate it. They want to destroy it. We have a prime minister now. Hate to even think about him as a prime minister, but we have a prime minister now who is on a mission to effectively neuter parliament. Now, there are people out there who've been saying that he's going to end the democratic vote and so on. He won't be so obvious. He's already mentioned about devolving yet more powers from Parliament. This started with Tony Blair. It will be the gradual and subtle erosion of the power of Parliament. And to be honest, if we watch, if you've watched Parliament live since the election, it is almost as though they have, they've put something in everybody's tea, because they have all been neutered. That's not Parliament. These are not people arguing for what they believe, arguing for their constituencies, arguing for their voters. It's just a room full of traitors. And I've also sadly noticed people who are expected to speak out and fight and lash out and throw blows to actually, they've just turned into good boys. Let's not rock the boat. And that worries me. To the point where I'm thinking to themselves, are they, when they actually become MPs and first go into Parliament, are they somehow threatened by the secret services or something like that, so that they keep their mouths shut and don't rock the boat? I don't know. But it just seems to me that just about everybody has been neutered. Turkey has shut down major social media channel due to Hamas incident. Yes, well, there is a different scenario happening in Turkey, and that's also a threat on the horizon to not just the entire region but Europe as a whole, unfortunately. But that's another matter. Bus pass and free prescriptions for the CHOP. Well, who would have ever believed that the first act of a Labour government would be to take away the winter fuel allowance from 10 million pensioners, of which 9.5 million probably really need it. It just beggars belief. But this should indicate how ruthless they are. They will take a winter fuel allowance from older people who've paid in all of their lives, who deserve it. I can't remember the saving in cost, and I can't remember what you actually get now. I'm not sure what the amount. Again, I've forgotten. I'm so sorry. But it pales into insignificance compared to what they are spending on criminals who have entered our country illegally. Criminals. They entered illegally, they broke the law. They have no right to be here. They certainly have no right to be demanding hotels and phones and all sorts of things and wait until they're granted indefinite leave to remain. Who do you think is going to be jumping to the front of the queue for housing, for everything? Because if they don't, they will riot. They will misbehave in a very, very life-threatening manner. It's not just, it's not just what we've seen this week with just a few hooligans throwing a few bricks. We've seen what they are capable of. I think there will be a major tipping point, and this scenario will not play out to the full, but there will be a price to pay the longer it continues its worrying. Absolutely, that's exactly what I said, Sean. Yes. I think that we will prevail because the strength of feeling out there is the strongest and the angriest I've ever known. Therefore, it's only a matter of time. The problem is this, that, as I said previously, the longer we leave it, especially now that this tyrant has shown his hand, he is literally going to start putting measures in place. And what really worries me is if this government is faced with not hundreds of thousands of people, but millions of people descending on London, albeit peacefully, but descending on London, demanding that this government resign, for example, that would be far too many for the police. Will they call the army in? Would our army take up arms against their own people? I think not. But what about a militia force made up of people who are not from this country, but happen to be here now? They wouldn't hesitate, would they? Now that is worrying. Don't have to answer this, but migrants are suing migrants centre in Kent for bad treatment and doesn't surprise me. Entitled. It's just unbelievable. You know, I wouldn't mind what we did for our own older generation. Really, I wouldn't. I wouldn't mind if older people were entitled to a subsidy on their heat, to help with this, that, and the other, whatever it may be, because they deserve it. Time served. Yes, contributions made. Again, I don't mind what we do to go out of our way to help our young people who are being seriously neglected, and they are suffering in so many different ways. They're taking second place. They're being shamed for their race, shamed for their history. They're suffering climate anxiety because these nutters are making them feel that it's going to be the end of the world tomorrow. And most of them don't realize that little brat from Sweden is actually making millions. She's just a pawn in a game, which is why she's constantly being shoved in everybody's faces, even though we just want to just get her and just shake her like this because she's so annoying. They don't mention that the last time they were at Glastonbury, all patting each other on the back about, for being so green. When they finished, they left half a million, 1 million plastic bottles behind them. That's green, isn't it? 20 of them. Okay. What's the next one we've got here? What about facial recognition for masks, etc.? Veils and religious clothing. How convenient. Now, I have been thinking, do you think that we should actually all subscribe to some new religion? I have been looking at there's some very strange religions out there. There's quite a few. And how would that work legally, I wonder? Um, any suggestions? Any thoughts that we could play them at their own game just to test the water to see what they will do? Because we know that they are biased. We know that they are not only biased, but we know that they are facilitating a certain demographic. This is not just here, this is throughout Europe. We also know that a certain demographic is being used to destroy borders, culture, race throughout the West on behalf of the bigger boys, if you like, without saying any words because I wouldn't want to offend anybody now, would I? Now, um, as I see it, this certain demographic is a version of what I would call demographic myxomatosis. Years ago, when the rabbits population got out of control and they were just eating everything in sight, they would release myxomatosis, which spread like wildfire and wiped out all the rabbits. And as I see it, it's a similar thing in demographic terms. They're the myxomatosis, and we're the rabbits, and that's why they're being released on us. And unfortunately, people aren't seeing the damage that is being done, and by the time they realise that the damage, the threat, it may well be too late, and that is terrifying. And the worst thing about it is this: is that in certain countries, that they, even though they practice this faith in their countries, they wouldn't have the time of day for these people. I did say in a previous live stream, I'm not sure if you know what day it was or if you watched it, but I spoke to somebody in the UAE the other day, a property developer. We've been speaking for quite a while, and I market their properties on my website and so on and so forth. And I actually asked him because he's such a respectful person. Everyone is, and I feel like I'm dealing with totally different people, and I'm finding it a little confusing because they may be of a certain faith, but they are totally respectful. And I did ask him, and I can tell you that he spoke clearly, bluntly, and honestly, and he did not have positive things to say about those who we are allowing into our country. And many of those who we're allowing into our country, they wouldn't dream of allowing them into their country. And in fact, it was only a few weeks ago where a certain well-known person from one of these countries actually is on the record saying, "You don't know what you are importing into your countries." I think that says it all. Okay, let's go on to the next one. What do we got here? Sign the two petitions, one called Demand Vote of No Confidence in Current Labour Government. The other is called Petition for the Resignation of Keir Starmer. Absolutely. Please post in the comments if you, in the chat, please. And maybe afterwards, if you could actually, Paula, if you could post it in the actual comments of the video, because this chat is supposed to replay afterwards. Sometimes it doesn't, or sometimes it doesn't replay for 2 or 3 days afterwards. I don't know why that's a YouTube thing. But if you could post it actually in the comments on YouTube or Facebook so that we can see it, and then I'll be happy to share it. Yes, interesting. Who started them? Yes, we are, sir. But we can deal with this. We must not be battered into submission. This is about our country, but our entire continent. It's not just the UK, it's Ireland, it's nearly every country in Europe, and Canada, US, Australia is facing this as well. but to a lesser degree in terms of migration. But they certainly have all the woke brigade and pushing hard over there. Um, but our direct concern, our immediate concern, is the UK and our neighbours, because, as I've said many times, and I will repeat it always, despite the fact that I hold the EU in contempt as a sinister, autocratic, unelected, unaccountable institution, that has nothing to do with Europe as nation states. And I don't want to see any of them suffer, any of us suffer. Um, each one is having different problems brought on in a different way. The southern European states, Spain, Portugal, Spain, Italy, Greece, Cyprus, they're on the front line. Then we have countries like Germany and France that have had the brunt of it thanks to their leaders. But this is not the fault of the people. In Germany, they've obviously suffered, still are suffering post war guilt, if you like, to a point where there are many of them who have almost brainwashed themselves that they deserve to be wiped out. It's really tragic because no German is responsible for what they did in the past, many years ago. Um, but unfortunately, this is the case. And the narrative is feeding that, as it is in the UK. This narrative where our children are told in school, you're white, you're guilty, you should be ashamed of yourself, etc. And children of other backgrounds are told, you were wronged by white people, you are disadvantaged, they owe you, etc. So that they raise guilty and angry, entitled, guilty and self-shame, angry and entitled. It's only a matter of time before the whole thing falls apart, and this is wrong. We can't allow this. We just can't allow this. He's a dictator. His own can't go against him, else they get suspended for 6 months. Absolutely. His first show was to suspend 6 or 7 of them the other day. Uh, this this is somebody who's, I think, we may have um, we may have the horror of seeing how disturbed he is revealed sooner than we think. He didn't look right to me from before. And as I said previously, in the debate with Rishi Sunak, that's the one where I think Rishi Sunak must have downed 4 or 5 tins of Red Bull beforehand, because he was like a jackhammer, wasn't he? He just wouldn't stop and wouldn't shut up. But he did throw a few good points at him. And when he threw a barrage of points at Keir Starmer that Keir couldn't respond to, he literally just went into this rabbit in the headlight, uh, institutionalized look. And I thought, this guy is not what he seems. They're scared. They were scared. They were so careful what they were saying to not let the cat out the bag. Now they have. Now we know, but it's too late for the moment. Uh, we should try to dress in bed covering with a hole for eyes for our next London meeting. Yes, Charlie, but all is far from lost. And their moment of fame means more to them than us. Room full of well-paid people. Ain't more bedding to wash. In Sunderland, in the last hour, the police station was set on fire. There is a peaceful protest in Liverpool, and there are Muslims walking around handing out burgers and cans of tango to the protesters. Okay. Someone called names Andrew started one, and someone called Colin Bourne started the other. Okay. Interesting. Has government ever had such a bad start to their election victory ever? Well, it wasn't a victory, was it? They won by default, a bit like that boxer in the Olympics. Um, And I don't know if you follow my Facebook page, I'd put something about it, and I've had somebody write something this long to explain that that other person was born female and I'm ignorant, even though her testosterone levels were through the roof and she was banned from other events. Um, Women shouldn't be subjected to this. This is wrong. And boxing, of all sports, boxing, that poor woman said just those two punches, she'd never been hit so hard in her life. Do we need to have somebody on the deck brain damaged before we actually address this? Uh, Plan for martial law. Yes, yes. And looking at how they've behaved, the arrogance, we also need to be careful that they're not going to provoke, problem, create a problem, terrify the people, offer a solution. Because what I've seen from the police this week tells me my gut feeling is instructions came from higher up, provoke. That's my gut feeling, and I don't know why. Maybe I'm wrong. They have their new army in place, ready trained. Can't have taps. Is quiet. Yes. If the police officers don't change their approach towards pro-British people, start arming themselves to feel safer, and it can go really ugly. We don't want to see that. We don't want to see civil unrest. We do not want to open that can of worms in our country. We must do this peacefully. We must be Um, we must be peaceful but firm. We must be strong, resolute, and we must not be appeased. The problem is the British public are so easily appeased. They're fobbed off with a few token gestures and then they back off. And by the next time, what they wanted to do, they can't do because the law's been tightened up. And that's exactly what will happen this time. We need to ensure that their usual strategy, it's always the same strategy with protests. Think about the fuel protests. Was it in 2000 when they were blockading the roads? By the second or third day, every time the BBC spoke to one, he looked like a thug. I won't describe what he looks like because I've done that before and then half the viewers look that way. But he looked like a thug. So effectively, subliminally, what they are doing is they have convinced the nation of BBC watchers that it's just thugs, or that if they support it, they will be associated with these people. This is how they work. It must be peaceful and resolute, but we need to be clear about what we aim to achieve, and we must not relent until we achieve all of our demands. Give all pensioners one week free a year in a 4-star hotel a year. No problem with that. I have no problem with anything done for any of our older people. It's bad enough they're increasingly terrified to leave their homes, increasingly terrified to turn their heating on. And meanwhile, we have, you know the rest, don't you? What was this one? I was thinking the same. I have breathing conditions, COVID mask. Oh, that was to a different one. The masking is another reason for migrant centres suing due to search process. Okay, what else we got here? I did answer about the names of people who started the petitions. I'll sign anything to try and get rid of him in government. I think it will take more than something that we sign. I think it will take our physical presence, but it must be calm. I travel around the EU for work. The Germans are almost blackmailed about their past. Yes, I'm afraid so. It's terrible. Um, yeah, but thank you for your interaction, guys, because this is a learning curve. I take an interest. I'm passionate about everything I'm talking about. I'm so desperately trying to curtail what I say because I don't talk from a script. I just go off on one. and that's becoming increasingly dangerous. I just want us to protect our country. I don't want to see hate with anybody, but we can't allow this to happen to us. We just can't. I won't read this one out, okay? Be careful. This is why we need to educate our own children as to the truth, but they're making it harder for us to do this. Uh, you have to be so careful. You only need your child to go into school and repeat something that contradicts the narrative, and you'll get hauled in, or you'll have social services breathing down your neck. This is where we've got to, and this is going to get worse because they want to indoctrinate the next generation. So their target is university age and lower, to actually ensure that they will be churning out. Churning out Trotskyites who just see like this. That's it. Do you think GB is trying to stop BRICS by ways of supporting other countries? Uh, I don't know. I'm really not certain. Came across them tonight. Okay, brilliant. Uh, and Peter, good evening to you too. Do whatever you want, just do not go against our. Yes, of course. Uh, what else we got here? There has been a dumbing down of our education system for years. Children being brainwashed. I was shocked at how my grandchildren are being taught. Oh, absolutely. Ask anyone under 18, really. Um, how many of them know the Battle of Britain? How many of know the importance of it? How many of them know some of the heroes of the Battle of Britain, like Douglas Bader? How many people know? Um, uh, well, there's just so much to know, um, and it just seems as though our history is being erased. And if you erase our history, you erase who we are, because we are uh, the sum of not our parts, but the sum of our history, the sum of what's happened to us. We're not who we are purely as a string of DNA. We're who we are because of our history, our heritage, what got us here, how we have evolved, not just in the UK or Ireland, but each country in Europe. We're interconnected in so many different ways. Well, we would be with the amount of battles we've had over the centuries, but in many ways, that's what's helped us to evolve. That's what's created the beautiful variety of cultures that we have, all different, all unique, and all under attack. And we have to fight for them as well as for ourselves, because this is really, really important. All of Europe matters, and it's all under attack, and we can't allow that. There was that was Southport and its surrounding, nothing to do with Tommy, just British feelings. Yeah, oh, absolutely. That this is the funny thing, isn't it? Because if we ask questions, or if we express, express a feeling, that our thoughts, then it is misinformation, or it is right wing, or whatever it may be. And yet, the other night, when it was literally just thugs, even mainstream channels were saying that they must be reform supporters, they're far right. Nothing could be further from the truth. Uh, you are not wrong. Police officers admitted it. Is that what I said about orders coming from further above, or something else? Um Alan Gibson, hello. Contact BBC. Tell them you are moving out and don't have a new address. Yes, so cancel license. You now will get a letter to the legal owner every month. Just bin it. The news will do you. Uh, we need more people like you who love the people and its freedoms, who passed on their freedoms they have looked after. Um, there are many people like me, Charlie. There are lots of people out there. Um, Life gets in the way. Media influences people. Um, Politics, government policy, um, social indoctrination, social media is what is dividing us. And why do they want everybody divided? Because that's how they can tear us apart. Don't get me wrong. I don't want us all, I'm not saying that we should all be lovey dovey. How horrible would that be? I love our beautiful, you know, um, our beautiful sort of enemies within sarcasm with our friends. I mean, how many amongst you actually really love to actually piss your best friends off and have a dig at them? It's so British, isn't it? And it's wonderful. And I don't want that lost either. Um, if we're friends in this country, and or if your best friends are very polite to you, I would imagine you would start to get worried, because that's not how we interact. I love the way we interact, and I'm seeing it die, and I don't want that. In Ireland, there are more and more small protests which will eventually culminate in a huge protest. But no matter how peaceful it is, there will be government infiltrators who incite the violence. Yes, I'm afraid so. Ireland's at a worrying stage now with 20%. That's a high number. That is a very high number. Um, I think that in this cycle, if the people in Ireland don't manage to make a significant indentation into what is happening, um, by the next time they decide to rise up, uh, it's going to be an uphill struggle. 15 years of no license. Just ignore all correspondence. Do not interact with them. If they come to the door, don't speak. Just shut the door. Yes, be very, very careful. And also, um, do not get your smartphone out and video them, because at the door they can't do anything. But if they have you on their body cam with a smartphone, they can then say that you have means to watch live TV, and they can then get an actual court order to inspect your phone. So don't try and make a TikTok video or anything. Uh, don't even speak to them. Just shake your head and shut the door. The darkness operatives have moved in power. We must show our love and light to humanity. Well, we will achieve much more. Oh, what's happening here? We will achieve much more peacefully than we ever will do rioting. We must do our utmost to stop people behaving violently. We need to be peaceful. If we are not peaceful now, or then that increases the chances in the future that violence will be necessary to defend ourselves, unfortunately. If a huge protest erupts, the government can actually suspend the constitution for as long as it takes for them to get it under control, i.e., complete tyranny. Yes, I think that we will prevail. I feel that we will prevail, but it's going to be messy. How many know we stopped slavery, that we gave India the railway, education, medicines, etc.? Absolutely. I'm actually sick to death of hearing people run our country down. Um, and the sad thing is that we're nowhere near our full potential, because we have so many people undermining it. And we shouldn't be now running for cover in our own country from invaders. We should now be addressing issues that are more important to us, from education to our healthcare to caring for our growing elderly, and how we're going to get through this sort of pyramid. Because obviously, with the falling birth rate, we've got an average population that's aging. There are ways that we could deal with it without having to import people. This importing people it's ludicrous because the vast majority of them just simply jump onto the benefits bandwagon and exacerbate the problem because it actually creates even more dependence on the state, which means the state needs even more money from less people because less people are contributing. And with their attacks now on non-doms and the wealthiest of people out there, that's not going to benefit them either. They might hit them for something this year, but next year their money won't be here. So what will they achieve? Nothing whatsoever. Uh, got lots of different race friends. We are British. Exactly. Exactly. Uh, better to be far right than wrong, yes, or on where orders are coming from. Watch out for your children now more than ever. More than anything, that doesn't lessen my respect for the elderly, which I do have huge respect for the elderly, of course, and I don't want your assets plundered. I don't want you living in fear or living in the cold. Our biggest main priority going forward, our priority is to our young. I keep repeating this. Our young, they are our national asset. The under 25s, under 21s, school children, because they're going for them. They're going for their minds and their hearts. And we need to protect them. And when I say our children, it doesn't matter whether it's your children, your neighbour's children, my children, whoever's children, our children collectively, our British youth, the youngsters, the difficult, stroppy, annoying youngsters, which is how they are, and isn't it beautiful? They are who we need to fight for because we are not really leaving them a great legacy, are we? And are we? That's the decision. Again, I will repeat this every day to every one of you who's hesitant. Are we going to stand to fight this battle for them one way or another? Or are we going to literally shy away from uh, this mission that we need to accomplish and kick the can down the road? Because if we do, that means that it is our children who will have to fight this fight, or their children. That is, if they are still considered, if they are still identifiable as British, to actually fight this fight, or will they be gone forever? And as I've said, nations that have been conquered nearly all rise again, but nations that bow down and kneel never rise again. They disappear forever. Time for everyone to buy camper vans. In 1971, I think our mainly white population supported our country. So why now do we need immigrants to support it? We have uh, a larger, uh, older population and more youngsters, but that doesn't mean that we can't have the people who we need to come and work here. That doesn't mean that they should accrue rights in any way, shape, or form longer term. And there are people who are willing to do that. That's fine. India offered the UK 100,000 vetted, highly qualified people who were happy to come and work here on a fixed term contract for 2, 3, 4, or 5 years without any claim on ILR or anything like that. And it was declined. And instead, we're allowing the demographic that we are to come into our country. So, what else does your party deal with? National Health Service, potholes, schools, etc. Um, who's the question for, and which party are you referring to? Just before I go, if you want to let me know, and I'll reply. Happy to. And I think I will call it a night. I'm not sure. National Health Service, potholes, schools, education. That's that's a big one that I have a lot of interest in. I'll cover it in a different one. Tonight was supposed to be just a quick one about council tax. Let's watch that one. I don't know what will happen. And once again, for the fanatic lefties, this is unconfirmed, and it's come from the Daily Mail. And as I said, me. Okay. So what else does your party deal with? National Health Service, pothole schools, etc. Me. Okay. So my party, are you referring to Reform, who I stood for? Yes. Well, if you'd like to, I will post the contract for the people, or you can just go to Reform and by all means read through it. It does make sense. It's actually uh, it's actually quite well thought out, to be perfectly honest. But I'm happy to cover these topics one by one. Um, if we're going to look after our national health service, sorry, our potholes and our schools, then we need to address where all this money is going. And there is not just millions, there is billions that is being siphoned off. And none of the major parties have dealt with this. Neither of them. How have you ever heard either of the main parties tell you that net zero costs 30 billion a year, of which 10 billion is subsidies? All of these monstrosities you're seeing put around in fields are making friends of these people very, very, very wealthy at your expense. How many have you ever heard either of the main two parties tell you that the Bank of England pays 35 billion pounds in interest to private banks on money that it printed? Effectively, I print a fiver and I give it to you and then I pay you interest on it. They don't need to do that. 35 billion. This is why there is an institutional, there has been an institutional war against reform, because we are, or have been and are, treading on the toes of some very rich and very powerful and very, very nasty people. And that's just a starting point. That's before we start on what we spend on people who shouldn't be here. It is a horrendous amount. We should halve our foreign aid, for example. Um, it it is absolutely atrocious, but it needs to be addressed. The problem is that the blob is so powerful that it just will not allow anybody to do anything unless they really do have the balls to take the bull by the horn. And I don't know if many do. And on that note, but I will cover everything. I don't know about potholes, to be perfectly honest. But before we can fix potholes, we need to have the money to do that. And I refer you back to what I've just said. Happy to cover anything. If you don't agree with me, even if you do, but even if you don't, you want to join me, you want to have your say, um, you're very, very welcome, as long as you're respectful if you're live, of course. Happy to take a few blows from anyone. That's democracy. That's how it should be. And thank you to Rob, and I hope I see you again. And just lastly, that's why they're pushing electronic payments, so you don't see their banks on the street. Absolutely. Guys, thank you very much. Hopefully I'll join you again tomorrow evening. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll be back soon. Take care. See you again. Bye.